Hello YouTube, this is Camman here, and welcome to a Battlefront 2 video, where I'm going to be discussing the light side heroes from the first to last, based off their best star cards in Hero Showdown, what their main capabilities are, from speed, strength, and dueling, to even what makes them so powerful and what's their weaknesses. Starting off, this will be a series on 2 parts. The first part being this one, as focusing on the light side heroes, that being the 5 saber heroes from first to last. The same will be for the dark side, and for the dark side it will be put into another video, and this is to help people who are in Hero Showdown for the first time and need tips on their 1v1s and what to expect from the hero they select, which one is the strongest and which one is the absolute weakest on their side. Without further ado, let's continue on to the video. Starting off, we are going to be focusing on our first character, being none other than the farm boy turned to Jedi Knight, Luke Skywalker. Luke, I would have to say, is by far the middle of the light side heroes, being number 3 in his spot, where he's not utterly slow or lacking in so many capabilities like Yoda, but also not overpowered like Anakin. His main strength comes from his speed, which is very aggressive. Not only is his abilities also speed based, but they also do some decent damage, but at the same time not always doing such an aggressive amount of damage where it would just kill someone instantly. So he's pretty well rounded to the middle. Luke's main strength being his speed, allowing him to even do some hook swings, which, if you don't know, is jumping in the air, holding the block button or not, and flinging your camera around to getting a quick hit from behind, bypassing your opponent's block. Luke's strongest star cards are here on this list, his strongest being Intensify. The reason why Intensify is high up on this list as number 1 is because, first off, Intensify can increase your damage over time every time you deal damage to the villain. Even if they regenerate from the damage that you have done from them, over time, the damage has still been done, and you're still getting that base amount of damage. Luke's damage output is basically average, but with that Intensify star card, you're going to be equal to Anakin Skywalker with a faster swing speed, which is a very solid outcome. As for Luke's abilities are basically pretty basic. They're pretty easy to understand, one of them being a complete area effect, another being a jump in the air, and just hit effect, which is not really an ability you can see on other heroes on the light side, so that's pretty rare to find, but also with a dash ability that's available to only 3 characters, himself, Yoda, and Maul, being on the dark side. So pretty much he's completely momentum based, but also a bit of aggression based. So if I had to range between which one is the weakest to the strongest, I would say his first push would be at a third place on this list, because pushing your opponent away is not really ideal since you want to get close to them at all times. His second strongest would be his dash. His dash is actually good for close range and catching your opponent off guard, hitting him from off angles, but at the same time they can be parried. It's not completely unblockable like Yoda's, so it does have that downside, leaving his repulse to be the strongest, not only knocking your opponent off their feet, but also going in for an extra hit comes greatly in handy. Not to mention a combo with a force push or a dash works good either way. Luke has a very average health pool of 750 compared to other heroes, just like Rey, Obi-Wan, and Yoda. They all have the same average health, being around 750 health. So if I'm going to be discussing their health, it's all going to be the same except for Anakin's. So that's pretty much it. Luke doesn't really have too much of a protection on him like Obi-Wan does or Yoda does with his force presence. So he definitely has those weak spots. So if you want to protect yourself, you best rely on your dodges and your blocking at all times, being good with a lightsaber. Other than that, he's pretty easy to understand for any new beginners. Now on to the next character, being none other than Mary Sue herself in the Star Wars sequels, Rey. Rey is the second strongest in the game on the light side saber hero roster, the first being pretty obvious at the end. But the reason why Rey has second is because her abilities are just rather busted overall. where she can dash and knock someone down and chain another hit, and a force ability that can only be dodged, and it inverts your controls while also slowing you down at the same time, and a whole area of effect that reduces your stamina and increases your damage output while also having complete wall hacks. The wall hacks doesn't really matter in 1v1 duels as much, but still those first two capabilities what it provides her makes it all the more powerful. Overall, Rey is just a powerhouse with an average health pool, not too much on the whole damage output or the swing speed, but still those capabilities make her very strong overall. If I had to put on a list between her abilities which one is the weakest and the strongest, it's really hard to say, but let me speak. I would put her dash at third. It's still strong, knocking someone down, and you can even chain a hit with it. But also at the same time, it does have a major capability that it allows you just to be completely unprotected, allowing yourself to get parried or even force choked. In other words, it's a pretty flawed ability that can also be cancelled by being hit. Her second would be her mind trick. The mind trick is just a dodgeable mechanic, which you would have to have perfect time with. So in 1v1 duels, if you don't know your dodge mechanics, then you're going to get severely punished for it, with inverted controls that will confuse you so much for the first time, while also slowing your movement. This is impactful on both pros and new players. And her strongest being her entire foresight. The foresight is very powerful. No matter what, it's having a halved cost on stamina, while also increased damage, is just very strong, with Darth Vader on the dark side being proven evident of this. And here are her strongest star cards from weak to best in 1v1 duels. Obviously having a 3 dodge is very effective. Having 3 dodges in a saber duel is extremely effective even at the cost of stamina. With Rey it doesn't really matter, if you pretty much leaving Street Fighter as an optional star card. If you want to run another star card, it would be recommended for beginners, but still overall it is just a simple downgrade just to have an extra dodge. Much like Han Solo in Heroes vs. Villains, having a longer cooldown doesn't really matter as long as those dodges are there, just making you harder to hit. Now on to the third saber hero on the light side, being Yoda. Yoda is the worst saber hero in the game on the light side, and that says a lot. His kit is pretty, well, it's pretty mid and very lackluster in terms of offense and attack, with a lot of downsides to it. So with Yoda, he has a very slow swing speed and doesn't really have like a very efficient one, where at times he can be kind of buggy and just overall just a terrible hero to go off in general. Not to saying that he's bad in saber duels, you're just going to have to use a lot of smarts and techniques to even improve upon your skill with him. Yoda has 3 different abilities: his Force Unleashed, his Force Push, and his Dash Attack. From ranking the weakest to the strongest, it's hard to say. I would say his Force Push is the weakest due to the fact that you would have to block and lose some stamina in order to charge it to get at least minimum damage, at least some decent damage with him. And the next one up I would put in second is his Force Unleashed, because it's pretty situational and all it does is give bonus health. It doesn't give a lot of counters to most villains in the game, such as Vader's Force Choke, Maul's Force Choke, Count Dooku's Exploited Weakness effect, and Kylo's Freeze. Pretty much countering 80% of villains on the saber side with their dark side capabilities. But the strongest out of everything is his Dash Attack, which is basically an unblockable hit. Overall, he does have a okay kit, but compared to other saber heroes, he is just lackluster. These are his star cards, which are ranked from weakest to best. Honestly, the opposing dark side is a must pick, because it will always deal more damage, allowing you to deal more damage with his own swings than he would have done with other characters or reinforcements, troopers, tanks, you name it. Basically in Hero Showdown, in a PvP, he would be very good, but in 1v1 duels, still massive. Not to mention his Jedi Mentor ability with card, his Jedi Mentor card, which also reduces damage overall entirely, whether that be swings, force pulls, blaster shots, you name it. All of it is reduced by that percent. It's small, but overall, it's a good star card to run on Yoda, who is already lacklustering with everything he's in. And that concludes Yoda entirely. Another thing I want to mention about Yoda is that his skill ceiling is very high, and trying to properly duel with him is going to take a while, and you're going to have to learn how to play Yoda before you attempt to 1v1 duel with him. Whether that be as him or against, sometimes the Yoda players, like Yoda mains, are really good with Yoda, but that doesn't mean that you could just play him and be as good as those mains, because he takes the most amount of skill on the light side to play as. And it's very hard to just really get anything good out of him in a 1v1 duel. Sure, he can bypass blocks a lot, but that is his only good side. Other than that, you just gotta be better with him in his saber dueling. So I would recommend mastering your saber dueling before you decide to head on to Yoda. The fourth light side saber hero is Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan would be, exactly as he is, fourth place as being the strongest saber hero in the game. The reason being is that what really runs with him is his ability to defend himself, and that's where it's going to come with the star cards. But let's go through his abilities first. He has defensive rush, force push, and his mind trick ability. That, well, with his mind trick, he can completely block opponents' abilities, whether they are blocking the attack or not, for a short duration, which is basically the same as Rey's mind trick, being rather unblockable but can be dodged. So that's a upside with him. However, his force push is pretty weak. In fact, I would consider it to be close to weaker than Yoda's, but that's a very close margin. The reason being is because you have to charge up the power before you can release it as a full-on force push, which gives the saber villain a lot of time, your opponent a lot of time to think about what they are doing before they go ahead and get close, parry that attack, and hit you with some damage. His defensive rush is actually very solid. However, compared to Rey's as well, his defensive rush doesn't really stun anyone. It does damage, and you might be able to get an extra hit out of it, but that's a long margin. So pretty much he's the same as Rey, but instead of being good on both defense and offense, he's mostly good on defense. However, that's where his strength does come in as a good beginner's character to learning on how to parry before they decide to come on to any higher-ups or any more skilled plays with other characters. So he's easily good for those who do not know how to saber duel. Now on to Obi-Wan's star cards. Obi-Wan's star cards is actually fairly decent. I think they are good for him. His best one is Safeguard, which is a stamina reduction card that cuts the amount of defense stamina required down to 40% at max in blocking. So basically meaning that both in saber clashes and blaster deflections, he is taking up to 40% less stamina reduction, which is where he comes really handy in terms of defense. There's another star card where if he's blocking a certain amount of attacks for this required amount, such as 2 saber hits or force attacks, he gains stamina reduction in all ends, whether that be swings or blocks, which is a good combination. Overall, he has a good star card setup. I wouldn't say that they're all the best for anyone that's new to the game, but if you want to learn how to saber duel, then he is your guy to go off with. Last but not least is none other than the chosen one himself, Anakin Skywalker. And as I stated before, the last character was number 1 on this list because he is absolutely broken. Not only does he have the 3 abilities, with Attraction just being such an aggressive attack that it pulls you in Not to mention with his heroic bite to combo a second hit in, knocking you off the ground again, while also having the ability to just hook swing, landing a third hit. His passion strike also coming in really handy for 2 unblockable attacks as well. This is not even mentioning his retribution, which dealing damage to him or his teammates over time causes this meter to go up, which is an unblockable attack, and if you get caught in it, you're getting force choked a lot amount of damage, and at the end you take a massive splash damage. For his star cards, I would absolutely recommend his Tenacity star card, Tenacious, which gives him an extra 100 health in general, and the combination of star cards is up to you. The reason why I would give 100 extra health is because taking damage as Anakin is actually a good thing from time to time, because that builds up your retribution meter more and more. And Anakin would have 900 health max, being around the same as Vader's health pool, suggesting that, yeah, that's pretty much a lot. And there are several combinations you could put with Anakin with his star cards, just making him absolutely aggressive. He is the balance between offense and defense as well, just being a straight up mad lad of a powerhouse. If I had to give a tier list between all 4 abilities, Retribution is top most definitely. His weakest, I would have to say, is his Passion Strike, and no matter what you say, his Passion Strike is still really strong, being able to land 2 unblockable hits instantly by a click of a button. His Attraction, as well, actually no, I would not give his Attraction at 3rd. I would give his Heroic Might. I would give his Heroic Might for 3rd, because not only are you just completely unmovable with reduced damage, it also knocks the players off their feet if they're not careful as well. And they're not really sure when you're about to let go unless they have good timing. And his second best would be his Attraction card, his Force Pull. Not his star card, my bad. His Force Pull is rather just the meaning of pulling someone in aggressively and just going for a hit, which for Anakin, especially with his Massive Strike star card, which increases his damage at the cost of some stamina, is really strong. This is why Anakin is the best on the light side, because his kit is that strong, and he stands up for himself to being the chosen one in Star Wars games and in canon, no matter where, even in BF2. Anakin is not a beginner character, but he is certainly one of the easier characters just to go off with, just because he's so aggressive and you don't really have too much to fear. However, he does not have a great defense like Obi-Wan, but his power pays up a lot, and that's why I give him number 1. I hope you find these tips enjoyable for your game in Hero Showdown. Go out there, destroy some shitters with these recommendations, the tips and tricks, the star card setups, and I hope you enjoy the video. See you in the next one on the dark side.